So welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today for the second virtual session of our 6th annual New York Seafood Summit. My name is Mike Saramella. I am the Seafood Safety and Technology Specialist with New York Sea Grant, and I'll be your host for today's session. For those of you not familiar with New York Sea Grant is one of 34 university-based programs under NOAA's National Sea Grant College Program. New York Sea Grant is a cooperative program between NOAA, Cornell University, and the SUNY system. For 50 years, New York Sea Grant has worked to support novel research of use to coastal communities and economies, and has provided technical support through multidisciplinary extension and education programming. You can check the chat box now for the link to the New York Sea Grant website to learn more about who we are and what we do. For those of you who are not familiar with the New York Seafood Summit, it was initiated in 2016 as a means of engaging and facilitating discussions among seafood stakeholders in New York. This includes those involved in seafood production, processing, sales, preparation, and those simply interested in eating more New York seafood. While the summit traditionally has consisted of an in-person 2 to 3 hour session in Manhattan, this year's summit activities were expanded throughout the week with 3 separate in-person sessions and 2 virtual. This is our last event for the week, but some of the events have been recorded, and any recordings will be made available on the summit website. Check the chat box now for a link to the summit website, and you can learn more additional details about this week's events, as well as access the event recordings once available. Lastly, while we work hard to ensure that the summit events are accessible and free to participants, we do rely heavily on volunteer support, donations, and external funding to support the summit activities. If you are able, we encourage participants to show their support for the summit and keep it going for years to come by donating. Any amount helps, and donations can be made online using the link in the chat box now. Before getting started, I'd like to review some ground rules for today's event. We have set this event up as a meeting which allows participants to share video and audio, so we can hopefully facilitate more engaging and interactive question and answer sessions. However, we do ask that you keep yourself muted when not speaking. If you have questions, please feel free to share them in the chat box at any time. The chat box can be found in the Zoom control panel as depicted on this slide, or you can raise your hand using the reactions button shown here. During the Q&A session, we will ask those who raise their hands to unmute and share their question in the order that we see them raised. Finally, we ask that all participants and presenters show respect to one another as we engage and learn today. This week's events would not be possible without the continued support of our summit partners and planning team, and I'd like to give them the opportunity to introduce themselves and their organizations now. I'll start with Dr. Stephen Fraccini from the Center for Aquatic Animal Research and Management, or CFARM, who worked with New York Sea Grant in 2016 to initiate the summit and has been actively involved in planning and executing the event ever since. Steve?
Hi, everybody. I'm really excited to welcome you here today. I'm personally very excited about this this session. Really excited to showcase our local fishermen. I'm an aquatic veterinarian with the Center for Aquatic Animal Research and Management. We've really focused on an integrative approach to seafood and aquatic animal health. Aquatic animal health. I'm really trying to learn more about the seafood industry at large, while being able to provide care and support for the animals themselves. So that's about it for me. But again, very excited to have you here on our last day. And we hope that you'll join us again next year for the Seafood Summit 2023.
Thanks, Steve. Next, I would like to pass the screen to Emma Forbes. She's our new aquaculture specialist with New York Sea Grant and joined the planning team in 2020.
Hello, everyone. I apologize that my camera has to stay off. I have apparently unstable internet today. But as Mike said, I am New York Sea Grant's aquaculture specialist, and my role is to help support the developing aquaculture industry throughout New York State. So I work with industry members and stakeholders all the way from the Great Lakes down to Eastern Long Island. This position was created about 1.5 years ago, so I'm working on developing a new extension program for current and emerging aquaculture industry and designed to support its sustainability and success. I'm really excited to be part of this committee. It has been great. And yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Emma. The next member of the planning team, Liz Carolla with Grow NYC, joined the summit team in 2018 and hosted the summit at Project Farmhouse for several years and continues to be an integral part of the planning team. Liz?
Hi, Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me. I'm with Grow NYC. We're a 51-year-old nonprofit. We provide essential programs and services throughout the 5 boroughs and make it easy for New York City residents to contribute to a vibrant, livable New York City. One of the ways we do that is through our Green Market program. We run over 50 farmers markets throughout the 5 boroughs, in addition to farm stand locations and our fresh food box program. So in total, over 80 food retail sites throughout the 5 boroughs. And we have producers who sell fresh seafood and shellfish that were caught in the Mid-Atlantic region and brought in and sold direct to the New York City consumer. And I'm from the Florida Gulf Coast and love the water and seafood, and really happy to be able to do this as part of my role overseeing markets with Grow NYC. Thanks, Mike.
Great. Thanks, Liz. The next few members could not join the call today, but I would like to recognize them for their contributions. The first is Claire Harton with Green Rabbits. Claire joined the planning team in 2017 and hosted our second seafood summit at the School of Visual Arts in New York City. She's an avid food systems planner and works a lot in our sustainable seafood space. Next would be Jessica Hennessy, Jessica Brooks, and Anik Jabot with the Department of Agriculture and Markets, who all joined the team this year and have been an asset in securing our space at the Restaurant and Food Service Show, which hosted our kickoff event this past Monday. Lastly, I'd like to introduce my colleagues from Cornell Cooperative Extension of Suffolk County's Marine Program, Kristen, Scott, and Tara. They're fisheries specialists with CCE and joined the team this year to help increase involvement and representation of our New York fishermen. I'll pass the screen to Kristen now to introduce the CCE team, and she'll also facilitate today's webinar. Kristen?
Hi, everybody. I am, as Mike said, Kristen Gerbino. I am a fisheries specialist with Cornell Cooperative Extension of Suffolk County. For those of you not familiar with Cornell Cooperative Extension, CCE serves Suffolk County with our agriculture, marine, community education, and 4-H youth development programs. We're educators, researchers, specialists, and volunteers dedicated to the mission of preserving Suffolk County's vast heritage, protecting the ecosystems, supporting families, and providing our youth opportunities for community service and research-based education. To accomplish our mission, we collaborate with researchers, all levels of government, Cornell University, nonprofits, and community groups to bring innovative programs and services to Suffolk County. On our fisheries program, we work very closely with the commercial fishing industry here on Long Island on a number of research projects, environmental projects such as marine debris removal, education projects, and our seafood marketing campaign. In 2016, we started our Choose Local Fish initiative, which is aimed at raising awareness and increasing demand for fresh, indigenous, sustainable, and healthy, locally harvested fish and shellfish. We educate consumers about all the species that are local to the area, where they can purchase these fish at retail locations, teach them how to cook seafood in their homes, teach them about the many benefits of choosing locally harvested fish, and also provide unique dining experiences to bring them opportunities to taste a variety of less familiar and underutilized fish species, along with all the other fish that are local to the area. Through these activities, we hope to increase demand for locally harvested seafood, create markets for some of the underutilized fish, increase profits for fishermen, and support the economic viability of fishing communities and Long Island seafood businesses. For more info on this project, you can go to localfish.org. And I'd like to pass it to Scott Curatolo-Wagman at CCE.
Thank you, Kristen. Not sure if I'm supposed to have anything prepared, but I just want to thank the planning committee for allowing us to join this year. It's been fun. It's been a lot of work, mostly Kristen and Tara. But, like Kristen said, we work a lot with the commercial fishing industry here. And it's been really good to see that kind of marriage between, the people we work with the most within the fishing industry. And then again, these partners like Mike and Stephen and Emma and others that, I'm forgetting here, but, it's good to kind of see everyone work together under a common goal. And, throughout this whole week, it's been a nice thing to see this all come together through a lot of hard work over the last year. And obviously, the planning committee's been doing this for a bunch of years. So it's really been an honor for us to be part of this. Tara, anything to add?
Hi, I'm Tara McClintock. From Cornell Cooperative Extension Fisheries Program. I've really enjoyed, working with Mike and the team over the year, and I feel, proud of the accomplishment that we've made with this seafood summit, and I look forward to just getting bigger and better. Thank you.
Thanks, Tara, Kristen, and Scott. Kristen, if you want to take it away and introduce our video.
Sure.
I'll start sharing now.
So Cornell Cooperative Extension's fisheries team has worked closely with and built very strong relationships with Long Island's commercial fishermen over the years through a number of research projects that we work on. We work at sea oftentimes on projects focused on bycatch reduction and conservation gear technology. We work on removing derelict lobster pots from the Long Island Sound. We've conducted a lot of biological sampling, outreach and education projects, our local seafood marketing efforts, and just overall support of this industry. So we had the idea that we would like to conduct interviews with 8 of New York's fishermen. They are representative of the various gear types here on Long Island, different fisheries and different ports. We hope to gain some perspective on their daily lives, their challenges, and their successes. And we hope you enjoy the snapshot into their lives. These are hardworking men who risk their lives to put delicious, nutritious food on our tables. And we're excited to share this with you today. It's been quite a project to put this video together. And we're really excited how it came out, and we hope you like it. So, ready to roll.
My name is Mike DePurdy. I am a fisherman from Hampton Bays, Shinnecock, and my 2 primary fisheries during the time period of about April till November is pound nets and fish pots, and usually during the winter time I fish for bay scallops or clams depending on what happens to be working out that year.
Bill Carlin, commercial fisherman. I own a boat, Brianna, and I drag for fish and also pot fish.
My name is William Reed. I fish on the fishing vessel Providence, and I primarily fish with otter trawl.
My name's Mike Baus. My fishing vessel is the Windsong, and I am a trawler, also known as a dragger.
My name is John Berglund. I have the fishing vessel Mary Elizabeth.
Sorry, guys, I'm going to pause my video. Hope that helps.
It's Mike Baus. My fishing vessel is the Windsong, and I am a trawler, also known as a dragger.
My name is John Berglund. I have the fishing vessel Mary Elizabeth.
Yeah, I was just.
Kristen, do you have it up on yours? I don't know why it's not working on mine.
Sure, I can get it up.
Apologies, everybody. I did test it earlier. If I can download it too. That's not gonna work. Any questions in the meantime about New York's commercial fisheries? We can get that started now. Feel free to unmute and put that in there or put that in the chat. We can start to try and answer those while we resolve this. Apologies for the delay. And try this again.
If you have it downloaded to your desktop.
No, you know what? Okay. Tara, would you be able to play it? It's my settings are not allowing me to share.
Shinnecock.
Yeah, none of these are working.
Lobsters, and we gill net for monkfish and skates.
All right. I'll have it downloaded in 50 seconds. Apologies all.
Okay.
All right, no questions in the chat box? Hmm. Oop, maybe not. This one. All right, so we do have a question in the chat box. Do you know of any efforts to enable direct-to-consumer seafood sales in the New York City metro area? I know that there's Liz at Grow NYC can probably speak to that. There's, I know they try to get more fishermen involved in the green markets fairly often. Liz, do you have anything you want to add about that? If Liz might have had to jump off. There's also, I know there's a CSF, Mermaid's Garden. All right, let's try this and then we'll answer that in a second.
My name is Mike DePurdy. I am a fisherman from Hampton Bays, Shinnecock, and my two primary fisheries during the time period of about April till November is pound nets and fish pots, and usually during the winter time, I fish for bay scallops or clams, depending on what happens to be working out that year.
Bill Carlin, commercial fisherman. I own a boat, Brianna, and I drag for fish and also pot fish.
My name is William Reed. I fish on the fishing vessel Providence, and I primarily fish with otter trawl.
My name's Mike Bouse. My fishing vessel is the Windsong, and I am a trawler, also known as a dragger.
My name is John Berglund. I have the fishing vessel Mary Elizabeth, and we fish mixed bottom trawl.
My name is Vincent Dam. Vessel name is Fishing Vessel Lady K. We fish for lobsters, and we gill net for monkfish and skates.
My name is Chuck Marisi, known as Captain Chuck. I fish trawler gear, and my vessel name is the Fishing Vessel Act 1.
My name is Dave Arapach. My vessel name is Caitlin and Maraid, and I fish trawl gear.
I bought my first boat and my clam digger's license in 2001. I fished on and off part-time for the first couple of years and then pretty much full-time since then.
I've been fishing around 55 years.
I've been fishing my whole life. I've been dragging for the last 12 years. Before that, I did some sport fishing, charter fishing. Always grew up on the water my whole life.
About 40 years.
I've been doing this probably about 35 years.
Since I've been 17.
73, 74. When I should have been in high school, I was out here in Montauk, Jimmy Ankle, and did that for a few years. Came out to go tile fishing in 1976, I think.
Long time.
Catch blue crabs, horseshoe crabs, weakfish, bunker, striped bass, bluefish, squid, pretty much anything that swims by in the bay. I have both my nets here in Shinnecock, which is right behind me. And our fish pots, we are out in the ocean out of Shinnecock Inlet, anywhere from about 2 to like 3 miles off the beach.
When we're dragging, we catch porgies, fluke, bluefish, sea bass, a lot of variety of fish, squid, mostly in the Long Island Sound. So we have a good variety through the spring and the fall.
Squid, fluke, flounders, sea scallops, whiting, which is silver hake, summer dogs, skates, porgies, mackerel, and lots of other things.
Primarily sea scallops, squid. We do a lot of fluke, sea bass, porgies.
Now we fish for mainly squid, fluke, sea bass, porgies, that type of fish.
We catch monkfish, skates. We do that for probably about 3 months, in the season. And then after that, we lobster till about January.
We catch squid, butterfish, mackerel, herring, fluke, flounder, cod.
Scub, squid, whiting, butterfish, fluke, sea bass, ling, mackerel, herring, filefish, John Dory's.
Some of the fish that I catch, I process myself for the green market that we do. And the rest of it, I ship through the market in New York City.
Most of our fish goes on a truck every night into the city, to the Fulton Fish Market. That is most of it. And then on my end, I also do some green markets and some local markets, trying to get some fresh fish out to people, more so than having to go through the wholesale end of it.
Most of our fish go to Fulton or Fulton Fish Market in New York. It's not called Fulton anymore. It's the Hunts Point Market, and they're consigned out of Shinnecock. Most of our squid goes to Point Judith, Rhode Island.
Some of our fish go to the city, and it goes by truck. And lobsters pretty much stay right here. We deal with Gosman's Fish Market, and they pretty much buy all our lobsters.
My fish get to the market on a tractor trailer at Montauk Fish Dock. Every day, the tractor trailer leaves and goes to the city, and hopefully they end up in somebody's stomach.
My fish end up in the stomachs of hungry people.
I enjoy the challenge of it, and I've been fishing ever since I was young. I always enjoyed being outside and being able to catch something, so it was natural for me.
I was enticed 50 some odd years ago by a lobsterman friend of mine. Went out on a boat with him, made one trip, and he even made the remark, he said, you never know, Phil, you might start fishing someday. And it was within a year, I believe, that I started building lobster pots, and this gentleman, Bert Smith, who had been in the lobster business for years, taught me how to build my first lobster pot. And that started it.
I grew up in a family that were clam diggers, and I can remember in first grade, the teacher going around asking the children what you wanted to be when you grow older. And I didn't say a fisherman, but I said I wanted to be a clammer.
I actually feel I knew at a young age that I was going to be a fisherman. As a kid, little kid, I just wanted to be a fisherman.
I became a fisherman. My father was a fisherman, so I guess I was brought up that way. Let's just say I'm a second-generation fisherman. It's kind of all I did growing up, working with him on boats, and that's it. I kind of grew up around it and became it.
It was in my family. I wasn't pushed to be a fisherman or anything. It's just something I've always done.
It's kind of nice. You kind of be your own boss.
It's the challenge. It's the ability to always tweak something to be able to catch a little bit better, to get ahead of your competitors. You can work for as little as you want, and like I said, you get out of it what you put into it.
Being a fisherman has its benefits, a lot of benefits. You're independent, you can work as hard as you want, and you can take a day off once in a while, but it's a good life.
We get to taste glory, oftentimes, thanks be to the Lord.
I think the best part about being a fisherman is the adventure. Each day is different. Depending on what you catch is different. The weather's different. There's a lot of variables that keep you ever changing.
The best part about being a fisherman is the independence. They say if you do something you love, you never work a day in your life. Sometimes that's true.
We've seen a big lobster die off 20 some odd years ago, and that kind of made us switch. And for myself in the fishing business, I've been kind of diversified, which has helped me. And you have to kind of go along with the changes. I have had to. The lobster in even after the die-off, I still lobstered a little bit. I had enough to be able to do the markets that I do in the city. And but then I had to switch over to primarily fish.
keeping the boat running, this multifaceted piece of machinery, making sure everything's working smoothly. You know, one thing breaks, you're done. Your day is done, and could be a safety issue too.
Right now, the greatest challenges are keeping up with the regulations. Different gear types, different areas that we can fish, when we can't fish, net size. It's a lot of paperwork that it has to be interpreted. It's just keeping up with the ever-changing rules, I think, is the hardest part.
The greatest challenges to being a fisherman today are, of course, regulations. Keeping up with everything, keeping up with the vessel, keeping up with the crew, the people. The crews are probably the biggest challenge at this point.
Well, the challenges right now, some of the biggest ones is the windmills we have to deal with. Pretty much if they put that stuff where it's all gonna go, we're out of business.
Every day you get on by one of these.
The biggest changes I've seen have been, like I said, when I first got my license, we were still in the last year or two of extremely high quotas for a lot of stuff like black sea bass, fluke, a lot of stuff people really depend on. And after that, we dwindled down to almost nothing. 4 or 5 years ago, for black sea bass, we were working on a 50-pound quota that would last for 2 weeks and then be shut down for 2 weeks and last for 2 weeks and then be shut down for 2 months. It's tough when you can't depend on something steady to plan a whole career around that. And like I said, if you don't have every permit that the state has to offer, you can't. Your chance to succeed isn't quite as much because the quotas aren't enough to just target one species and be able to just go at that full time.
The biggest changes I've seen, I think, are I'd have to say the rules and the regulations. When we're able to fish, where we're able to fish, how we're able to fish, what gear we have to use to keep up with the ever-changing regulations.
Well, a lot of it's got to do with regulations, pretty much. I mean, they keep taking away, and they don't give us anything back. And when they do give it back, they just give it in dribs and drabs.
Restaurants were shut down, so that is a huge portion of where seafood goes to in New York. So once that kind of collapsed, there was really not much to do for a couple months. The shellfish buyers were limiting people to going a couple days, only bringing a little bit. And then gradually it kind of got better, and then during the summer it picked up.
I don't really know if it's affected it that much. The fishing the prices stayed pretty good. People had to eat. So, I mean, at times it got a little flooded at the start when it first started. I think a lot of people panicked and were even afraid to go outside, it seemed like. But through the pandemic, the last couple of years, it's been pretty normal for us, to be honest with you.
We had work. People still had to eat. I was never lacking in work, and so maybe we made a little less money, but whatever. We were healthy, and it was a tough time for everybody.
At first, the pandemic kind of crushed the industry along with everything else. Restaurants closed, everything closed. So naturally, where's the fish going to go? Who's going to disperse the fish? Since then, since the beginning, I think people have kind of realized that fresh local fish is a little more important, and people have started kind of dispersing on their own through their own local markets. And I think people have been welcoming to that idea more so than the big wholesale end of it, knowing that you're getting fresh local fish.
Well, when it first started, it affected everything because the markets couldn't get rid of fish, so the fish prices were low. The only thing that has come out of it right now is with the lobster, the prices have come up. So we are getting paid more, but the cost of living in general with the pandemic has gone up. Everything's skyrocketed. Price of fuel, price of gear, everything you go to buy, it's pretty much gone through the roof. So it has to change.
That's about it.
I became a fisherman. That's a good question. Only one witness here.
I'm not a good movie actor.
That's the best part. You want to hear the worst part?
We catch what swims in our fish tank.
We used to just go airmail.
I'm sorry.
All right. Apologies again all for the technical difficulties. I apparently should have watched more of it to make sure it all worked. But Kristen, Scott, and Tara are available to answer any questions you might have about the fishing industry. They work very closely with these fishermen on a daily basis. I know we had one question that I didn't completely finish answering for Michelangelo about accessing direct consumer and seafood in the city. The best place you're going to do that would be at the green markets in the city. As you heard, some of the fishermen you heard from today actually do go to the city and sell direct to consumers there. So if you're interested in buying direct from the fishermen, that's going to be your best bet in the city. All right. Again, you guys are welcome to unmute, ask questions of Kristen, Tara, or Scott, myself as well. I work more on the post-harvest seafood safety, nutrition, sustainability end, but please do share now and I'll pull up our next videos.
I have a question. I know they cited regulations as a challenge. How often are these regulations changing that they have to keep up with them? Is it an annual thing or like monthly?
Can be annual. It could be more than annual, depending on, what the stock status is of the species. And also different regulations are changing. It might be the gear size. It might be a closed area. So they're constantly, might be a trip limit or a minimum fish size. So, it's a lot of work for the fishermen just to keep up with the different regulations on all the species, on all the areas, on all the gear types. And that's state and federal. So yeah, they're constantly bombarded with, what's new, what's going on, what's changing.
Thanks, Tara. Are there any other questions about fisheries that you might want to ask now? All right, so feel free to add and include more questions in the chat as we go. Next, I'm going to ask Kristen again to introduce another effort that they've been working on. So also trying to help the consumers better understand and know how to use these local species that our fishermen are catching to enable them to better utilize this. So Kristen, if you want to introduce our next videos.
Yes, so we started this video series in response to the fact that a lot of consumers came to us and said they love seafood, they love eating it out at a restaurant, but they don't know what to do, how to cook it themselves. So we heard that very often. And then COVID really was the opportune time to create this video series because people could no longer go to restaurants and eat out. They were eating at home. People were interested in learning how to cook. In a lot of the grocery stores, the chicken and the steak and other terrestrial proteins were harder to find and they were very expensive. So that left seafood for people to get more comfortable eating seafood. So Cornell Cooperative Extension aligned with Stephanie Sachs to create this series of 10 how-to videos demonstrating how to prepare healthy seafood dishes, featuring some well-known and some less familiar local fish. These videos have reached a very large audience and have helped many people get comfortable cooking nutritious, simple, and very delicious seafood meals in their own homes. A little bit about Stephanie. Stephanie is a nationally recognized culinary nutritionist, a professional chef, an author, an educator, speaker, consultant, and authority on eating to prevent and manage illness. For 30 years, she has helped transform the way people eat using hands-on experiences to inspire, educate, and offer practical tools for food lifestyle changes. She has her Master's of Science in Nutrition from Teachers College, Columbia University, is a certified nutrition specialist, certified dietitian nutritionist, and a graduate of the Natural Gourmet Institute for Health and Culinary Arts. Stephanie inspires, educates, and empowers people to eat and live to their full potential. As an innate healer, she uses food as a conduit to deep transformation. Her book, What the Fork Are You Eating?, is a must-read guide for anyone looking to make small changes in food choices for optimal health. She's a sought-after media guest expert on the topic of healthy choices with frequent appearances on The Dr. Oz Show, PBS, and multiple radio programs. So we were very lucky to connect with Stephanie through the East End Food Institute. And during COVID, like I said, it was just the opportune time to create these series of videos. So I hope you check out not only the ones that we're going to show today, but the whole series. They are at localfish.org. And I think we're ready to play.
Welcome to Cornell Cooperative Extension's Choose Local Fish, local seafood cooking demonstration videos. By choosing locally harvested seafood, you can be sure your food is fresh, indigenous, sustainable, and healthy. Each purchase of local seafood supports the economic viability of fishermen, coastal fishing communities, and small businesses. Let's join culinary nutritionist Stephanie Sachs in the kitchen as she shows you how to prepare this locally caught fish.
This is lime, cilantro, jalapeno, whole roasted fish, and today we're using black sea bass. So I have 2 fish here that have been cleaned. They've been gutted and sliced open, so they've got nice room in their cavity to be stuffed. And I had my fishmonger do this. And now what we're gonna do is just prep all the ingredients to go atop the fish, inside the fish and atop the fish, and then it's gonna go in the oven. So I preheated my oven to 375. What I'm gonna do first is I'm gonna slice up my jalapeno. I'm gonna do it into rounds, like so. It's gonna be a little spicy, so you don't have to use a whole jalapeno if you don't want. I'm gonna do 4 cloves of garlic. This garlic is very fresh. I'm gonna rough chop it, like so. You start with a slice, and then I'm gonna run the knife down. So what I'm doing is I'm prepping everything before I start to decorate my fish. Cut off some of the harder part of the leek, and cut this in half. And you want to use 1 small leek here. I'm going to slice my leek up. Push that to the side. Before we put everything on the fish, I'm going to actually make some cuts on an angle down the body so I can get a little bit of a seasoning in there. The number of cuts will depend on the size of the fish, of course. Okay, and then I'm going to take some olive oil and douse each fish with some olive oil, just like so. I'm going to salt each one as well, inside the cavity too. And then I'm going to start to stuff. So I'll put, half the leeks in there, and then I'll put what's left around. I'll do the same with the garlic and the jalapeno. So you want to generously stuff, but you also want to sprinkle on top. You can see it's like a work of art. And then I'm going to take my cilantro, which has been cleaned, and I'm going to give it a bit of a haircut, like so. So again, I'll take about half of that, sprinkle it, and stuff it. And it's messy. Doesn't have to be super neat. It's nice and messy. Clean the rest of this up, toss it on. So now we've dressed our fish. We've put olive oil on it, we've put salt on it. We're gonna put some fresh crushed pepper on it. This is black pepper. So you can run your mill over the fish. And it's gonna be a very delicately flavored fish. And with whole roasted fish, I like to just pick the fish from the cavity when it's done. So, and we're gonna just finish it with some fresh lime juice. So we can actually take our hands in. You can lift the fish up and squeeze into the cavity as well. You can actually just leave a line in the cavity too, just like that. And there you have it. It's going into the oven right now. The oven is preheated at about 375, 400. It's time to check the fish. It's been in the oven for 25 minutes, so it should be completely done. Oh, wow. Come on, that is gorgeous. So you can see how the slits down here open the flesh up, so it actually cooks quite well. Wow. Okay, so let's give it a taste. Go over here and I'll pull some of the skin back. I'll just take some of the fish off and take some goodies with it. That's good. Very, very fresh. It's citrusy, it's light, yet it's robust and meaty at the same time. So you can let it cool a little bit. You can serve it with a side of quinoa, roasted vegetables, pasta, but here's your whole roasted fish.
Thank you for choosing local fish. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like, subscribe, and share it with your friends. Also, please check out the description below for links to more information about local fish species, more recipes, where you can purchase this local fish, and a lot more. Thank you.
Welcome to Cornell Cooperative Extension's Choose Local Fish, Local Seafood Cooking Demonstration videos. By choosing locally harvested seafood, you can be sure your food is fresh, indigenous, sustainable, and healthy. Each purchase of local seafood supports the economic viability of fishermen, coastal fishing communities, and small businesses. Let's join culinary nutritionist Stephanie Sachs in the kitchen as she shows you how to prepare this locally caught fish.
This recipe is pan-fried scallops. Scallops are tender and sweet, and they're absolutely delicious. And this is a really, really simple recipe. When you get your scallops, make sure they're dry, ask your fishmonger, and then you're gonna clean them with lemon, salt, and water. The key to making the perfect scallop is to make sure that they are patted dry, very dry. And then I'm going to take some ghee, which is clarified butter. So for anybody who has a dairy allergy, clarified butter is actually something that you can't eat because it's casein and lactose free. When you do scallops, I've tried them multiple times with just oil and you don't get the same kind of crisp on them. So I'll always use the ghee. You could also use butter. And I'm putting it on a medium heat, and I'm gonna do a little bit of olive oil in there as well. And And I'm just gonna let this heat up. Now the good thing about ghee is that it can take a really high heat, just like a butter. It's part of why I like to use it, also because it just tastes really good. So I'm just gonna throw my scallops in. And I'll salt them once they're all in. Get them cooking first. You can always add the salt at the end too. I'm gonna put a little on now. As I always say, you can never take salt away, but you can always add. So be mindful how much salt you put on something before it hits your plate. Some fresh ground pepper. And this is all this dish really takes, is just a little ghee and olive oil and scallops and salt and pepper and lemon, and that's it. And you can finish with a little wine if you'd like to. We'll just let these puppies cook. I'll flip them a couple times while cooking them, typically. But if you like your scallops fairly raw, this is a good time to flip them, where you have a little bit of browning, and then you're gonna sear the other side. So this, to me, is the perfect scallop. You just have to be patient with these babies to get this crisp. If you don't dry them off, you're not going to get this crisp. Once you have this on one side, this is actually now where I put the lemon in. So, woo! I'm going to turn it down a little bit so I'm catching all the seeds in my hand. Woo! Now that's going to be the perfect scallop. We'll let it cook a couple more minutes. Just brown what's not brown. But you can serve this with the ghee and lemon just on top of rice, just like this, and it's absolutely delicious. Even a little pasta is nice too. Some lentils, some polenta. Yum. Okay, our scallops are finished. We've got our plate here. Put a couple in here like that. And we'll get some juice. Okay, now to try it. Remember, the key to getting them brown like this is making sure they're really dry. Those are good. Nice and lemony and a little buttery. Absolutely delicious and super simple.
Thank you for choosing local fish. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like, subscribe, and share it with your friends. Also, please check out the description below for links to more information about local fish species, more recipes, where you can purchase this local fish, and a lot more. Thank you.
It's been 2 months since Sealed was here, and I'm already
Welcome to Cornell Cooperative Extension's Choose Local Fish, Local Seafood Cooking Demonstration videos. By choosing locally harvested seafood, you can be sure your food is fresh, indigenous, sustainable, and healthy. Each purchase of local seafood supports the economic viability of fishermen, coastal fishing communities, and small businesses. Let's join culinary nutritionist Stephanie Sachs in the kitchen as she shows you how to prepare this locally caught fish.
Okay, so we're gonna do bluefish burgers now. Bluefish has a very strong flavor and a lot of people don't like it. So I created this recipe with the hopes that anyone will try this. Really, really simple. Now, words to the wise. When you get bluefish, ask for it to be skinned and filleted. You will always have skin on the bottom here. And your bluefish, sometimes you'll see a very dark red patch down the center. That's the area of the bluefish that has the really strong flavor. So actually you can remove it. And some people love to include it, but you can remove it. So we're gonna take the bluefish here off the skin. So I make a slight slice down the tail. I'm holding the tail, the skin, and I'm using my really sharp fillet knife to move it down. Just like so. I'm gonna move my hand along to hold the skin. This happens to be an easier fish to pull the skin off of. And then all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna break the bluefish up into pieces in a bowl. You can do it with your hands, you can mash it with a knife, but I like to get my hands dirty with food. So, and I encourage you to do the same, I really do. And then I'll repeat this with the rest of the fillets until we have a nice bowl of bluefish. This is so cool. You ever done this? This feels so good. This is a great thing to do with kids, by the way, to get them in the kitchen, get them touching and feeling food and playing with it. It makes them not afraid, but make sure their hands are clean. All right, so here's our essentially mashed bluefish. And now what we're gonna do is we're gonna put the rest of the ingredients in. So that's 1 egg, beaten. I'm gonna toss it in there. Some garlic. These are pretty big cloves, so I'm just gonna do one of them. And I encourage you to get creative with all of these recipes. So there's your garlic. And now we're gonna do the onion. And it's about 2 tablespoons of diced onion. And I like to use red onion to balance the color and the flavor, but you can also use white. You can also use scallions or leeks. So put this aside. Again, we're gonna use that technique here. I'm cutting down and leaving part of this intact and then running down this way. So a little more than 2 tablespoons. So I'll do like that. We have our onions and garlic in the bowl with some egg and our mashed up bluefish. We're gonna add breadcrumbs. So we're gonna add a cup of breadcrumbs. You can use any breadcrumbs. You can also use cornmeal if you like, less expensive. These happen to be gluten-free breadcrumbs because we have a gluten-free home. So then we're gonna do a tablespoon of mayonnaise, and this is a canola mayonnaise. You can use any kind of mayonnaise. So I'm gonna do about a tablespoon of mayonnaise. And then I'm gonna take a rubber spatula and mix it around. Now you don't really need to add salt because the fish happens to be quite salty itself, and it's so strong in flavor, and you've got the breadcrumbs. These are seasoned, so I'm starting to mix it with this, but I'm gonna get my hands in there to form the burgers in a moment.
Some oregano, some thyme. There we go. Taking that in. And I love just pulling fresh herbs from my pots.
So I'm gonna put this in. You can put this in at the end, you can put this in with everything else. Okay, so now let's form these burgers. Okay, 1, 2. You can actually do them as burgers or sliders, however you want to do them. We're gonna make them as burgers. You can get 4 really big burgers out of this, or you can get 5 medium size, or you can get 6 sort of smaller average size. And there you go. So our burgers are now ready for the grill.
I preheated the grill, so it's on like a low medium, which is about 400 right now as I just opened it.
So here are your bluefish burgers. They look just like turkey burgers or hamburgers. Anyway, you can use regular buns, but in my house, because I'm gluten-free, we're gonna do some gluten-free bread, and we're gonna make our homemade buns. This is something that my older son, Jack, created. Go. And there's my little burger. I'm gonna put some ketchup on it, because I like my burgers with ketchup. Whoa! It's just like a turkey burger. There you go.
Thank you for choosing local fish. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like, subscribe, and share it with your friends. Also, please check out the description below for links to more information about local fish species, more recipes, where you can purchase this local fish, and a lot more. Thank you.
Right, thanks everybody. I did see we have some questions coming in the chat, so we'll start to work through answering some of those. I want to jump back to, I think it was Diane's question. This one would be for you guys at CCE, if you have any response to that. Does anyone have any concerns about the future of the Shinnecock fishing port, that all the fishermen continue to have a place to pack out? Have you heard anything, or are you involved in this at all?
Yeah, this is Kristen. We're down at the dock at Shinnecock quite a bit. And yes, it is in a state of disrepair. But recently, and I think it's scheduled to be completed somewhat in the near future, but they are doing renovations on the dock down there, which will hopefully provide some improvement. But I know there is a lot of need for not only the improvements, but ice making capacity and different infrastructure down there at Shinnecock. And I'm not sure if and when any of that will happen.
Great. Thanks, Kristen. All right, so next question was, as a consumer interested in sustainability, is there a way to know about where fish come from and traceability, like when and where they were caught? So the best thing you could do there is purchase as direct from the source as possible. So if you have the option purchasing direct from the fishermen, such as at green markets, farmers markets, if they sell there, some fishermen actually have retail outlets that you can go to and you'll be purchasing direct. But outside of that, if you don't have that access, and fishermen were farmers, so aquaculture as well, you can purchase direct from the farms. Don't be afraid to ask questions, do some research on the retail outlet you're purchasing from, ask them where they're getting their products from, how they ensure that what they're buying and selling is what it says it is. So you can ask your fishmonger on that. Kristen, do you have something else you might want to add there?
Yeah, I would say that, all U.S. wild caught fish is a smart choice because it is sustainably managed. And, the regulations are in place to make sure that the stock is able to replenish itself. And, maybe that means that the trip limits are very low at a certain point, but they're in place to make sure that fish is sustainably managed. And like I said, strict regulations are in place. So choosing, U.S. wild caught fish will ensure that it's sustainable. If you want more information on an exact stock of fish and the status, I like fishwatch.gov to give you any information on every species of fish. I find that info really helpful.
Thanks, Kristen. Epic's also indicated some projects that they found specifically with open ocean fish farms and recently hasn't heard about much in New York. So there is one business interested in farming, but there's a lot of regulatory hurdles to get through that. There's interest throughout the US, although it is very small. There's not a lot of that currently happening, but there is a lot of interest and a lot of research going into identifying more. Emma, our aquaculture specialist, who is on today, sorry to put you on the spot, might have some things to add. If you do, Emma, feel free to.
Yeah. So I believe Forever Oceans that you're talking about, Epic, is located in Hawaii because they grow kampachi, which is yellowtail. Their products, I don't believe, ship nationwide, but if you come to Hawaii, you can get it. In terms of New York, as Mike said, there is someone interested in going offshore, and kind of farms across the US are sparse, but there are a lot of land-based facilities. So we have a commercial scale salmon farm upstate that you can purchase their fish from. We have 2 larger scale trout farms, so you can have trout shipped to your house. So not necessarily marine fish, but that is happening in New York. And if you're interested in learning more about it, I'm happy to talk more offline and connect.
Thanks, Emma. Thanks, Tanya, for adding more on that. Yes, you mentioned community supported fisheries. That is another great option. I know Mermaid's Garden, I believe, out of Brooklyn or Queens, or all of them, is one accessible in New York. Dock to Dish, I don't know if they're still doing direct to consumer or if they're back to restaurants, but that's another option you can look into. Something else on the traceability, sustainability side is you can look into blockchain. That is something that a lot of different sectors are exploring, including the fisheries sector. And that's a way of ensuring that the products making it to market are traceable and actually what they're meant to be. And Michelangelo, we've got another question from you on, are there any fisheries that are still robust where New York State fishermen catch proportionally more than fishermen from other states, or New York State fishermen at a disadvantage in a catch share system for all species because New York State historical catches have simply been lower than New England states no matter the species? So that would be, I don't know if Tara, Scott, or Kristen, you can answer that.
Some of the, robust stocks, scup, or also known as porgies, are you know, way above target population levels. So, you know, they're definitely something that you can feel good about eating. Black sea bass has also, you know, their stock is rebounding, except the management hasn't really caught up yet. And, you know, you just have to keep in mind that it's split up and down the coast.
Right, so it's not so much, you know, your question about fisheries that are robust and can fishermen catch proportionally. It's, as Tara is explaining, that our proportion of what we can catch is very much reduced compared to other places.
Right. And I mean, a part of that isn't actually historical catches. It was historical reporting when data collection first started years ago. There was, you know, some discrepancies when reporting started. So some states did better at reporting and collecting data, and New York took a while to get on board. So that reflects in some of the state by state quota. You'll see that New York has a lower percentage.
And shortly, I will briefly introduce a report that was launched that does provide a little bit more detail on that, that topic and the quotas and some history on that as well. Any other questions about fisheries in New York in general for our fisheries specialists, or about the culinary demonstrations and cooking videos from Stephanie Sachs? All right. So we've got a question about the situation with local processing facilities in New York. So at the moment, they're very limited. There are some shared kitchens. There's a lot of interest in getting more out there. There are a couple of small businesses and kind of small retailers that do some in-house processing. But for the most part, we do not have, especially any commercial processing of seafood to a large scale in New York. Yeah, and that's been identified as a challenge for all sectors for many years, and looking at ways to try and increase capacity for not only like general processing, filleting and stuff, but also value added. So adding value to that product so that the producers can get more value for their product. All right. Any other questions?
Hi, this is Epic.
Hi, Epic.
I do have another question. I started to type it out, but never mind.
Sure.
So I purchased once a tuna from the Pacific Ocean from San Diego, I believe. I can't remember the brand of it. So it's, you know, it's marketed as being able to consume raw for sushi. So it's sushi grade. I think they're caught young and then raised, you know, at their facilities and then shipped out.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems in terms of the quality of the product, it's what I'm looking for, but it isn't sustainable in terms of why would how can I justify shipping a piece of tuna from Mexico, basically from the Pacific Ocean to me here in New York? So that breaks the logic if you're trying to be sustainable and consume locally, right? But I wonder if, like, my question with the fish farms and that kind of approach to consuming fish, if that would be something that we should be looking at as a community, and should we actually even be looking to consume more fish when there's I don't know if this is still true, but the understanding is that it's overfishing is definitely an issue, and that we won't be able to continue to consume fish as a society in the future.
So first I'll say with that is what you're talking about would be ocean ranching. So that's where they're pulling wild species in and growing them out in cages. It's done with large species like salmon because it's very difficult to grow those in a controlled setting. I know there's research on it, but those are such a large species, such a complex species that it's very challenging to grow those in a farm setting. The other thing there is that Our fisheries in the US are highly regulated for the purpose of ensuring that they are sustainable. So while we are fishing at max capacity, so we can't get more than we're getting from the wild capture fisheries. And so the whole concept is that aquaculture is coming in to help address the gaps that are being developed and produced by, one, increasing the consumption of seafoods, and two, increasing populations. But it's about, kind of finding that balance where you can support a living wage for our fishing industries. They can continue to provide those wild caught products that we have here in abundance across Long Island that are highly managed to ensure they are sustainable, while also supplementing the market with maybe affordable species that can be produced more cheaply through other means, through aquaculture potentially. But it's trying to find a balance of sustainability and all aspects of sustainability. I think the big thing with sustainable production that people always overlook is they always focus on the environmental aspects, which are important, but you can't have a truly sustainable production system if it's not also socially sustainable as well as economically sustainable, right? So you need to kind of balance all of those out to address that. And so a lot of it has to come down to the choices that you're making when you're putting seafood and fish on the plate. If you can't access the product in particular looking for, look for alternatives. There's a lot of different species being caught in New York that aren't being heavily utilized that could be utilized more. So looking at alternatives to things you're bringing in from across the country or overseas, and tapping into the local markets and what we have here. Kristen, Scott, Tara, do you guys want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna mention about using the underutilized species, that you're tapping into, something that's, a source of income for the fishermen, a nice healthy source of food for people, but it's also to, any species that may be overfished or overfishing occurring, is that by switching to something underutilized, you can help take off some of the pressure for a while to help that stock kind of rebuild.
Yep. And Epic, I see you put another link to Faroe Islands. Yeah, there's a lot of producers, a lot of aquaculture, especially overseas, limited in the US, but it is growing various different types of aquaculture. In New York, our #1 farm product or marine or aquatic product is going to be oysters, which is taking off and growing quite rapidly in the state. Very sustainable production. No inputs to the environment, actually has beneficial impacts on the environment, the growth and grow out of oysters. We have some land-based facilities operating upstate. And again, Emma, our aquaculture specialist, has a lot of those resources and knows the aquaculture landscape in New York State, as well as some of what's going on nationally through colleagues within the Sea Grant Network. So you're welcome to reach out to learn more about aquaculture. Also look out for some of our previous talks earlier this week. We did have some of those producers actually speak at our in-person talks, some of which were recorded and will be posted after on the Summit website.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, I was not able to attend anything in person. So are you going to send that out later?
Yep. And once things are available on the website, I will send out an email letting everybody know that they can go there to view everything.
Yeah. Thank you.
Right. Another question, Michelangelo. On this topic of U.S. fisheries being very well regulated and sustainable compared to seafood imports from other countries with worse regulations and sometimes outright mislabeling of what's being imported, is there anything being done to make sure that U.S. fishermen can compete effectively? Seems like the absence of intervention of some kind, U.S. fishermen would be at an unfair advantage, bearing the comparative extra costs of regulation while competing in the market with other participants who aren't subject to the costs of regulations. So complicated question. So I'll let CCE talk more to the fisheries regulations. And I'll briefly say, when it comes to food safety regulations, although it can't be as strictly enforced overseas, they are subject to all the same food safety regulations coming in. I know that there's a lot of issues with mislabeling in general, and they're looking into ways to how to regulate that. There were some regulations that came down the line recently There are some tagging requirements for certain species. So it varies from species to species, I'd say. But I think maybe CCE might have a better response to the actual regulations and comparisons from imports than I can.
Yeah, I would say that that's one of the big reasons why we started this our Choose Local Fish initiative, is because imported seafood does compete unfairly with the domestic seafood. I've in my research tried to figure out an exact number, but there are a lot of different reports, and it's somewhere maybe around 90% of fish that consumed in the US that is imported from other countries. So we can see that it is, like I said, competing unfairly. But what we can do is just continue to encourage consumers to choose local. And hopefully that is having an impact. We're definitely trying to raise awareness and overcome any of the barriers that people say of why they choose something over, something imported over something domestic. And we do a lot of tasting events where we give people the opportunity to try not only a lot of the underutilized fish, but also just make them realize all the fish that are available here on Long Island as a whole. I mean, we have a poster that we share, and we have over 50 species of fish that are edible that are here on Long Island at different times of the year. But I think it goes back to education, and that is something that we're definitely working heavily on here. And we can see as we try to expose consumers to some of these fish, even fish, sea robins, people never realized that they could eat them. They were always told that you can't eat that, that's not food, you throw it back. But we've included it in some of our restaurant events, and we've had very skilled chefs prepare it, and people are blown away by the fact that they're eating a sea robin. Not only the fact that they're eating it, but just that it tastes so delicious when it's so well prepared and it's plentiful. And that's something that we could in the future create markets for some of these fish that people they've never opened up their minds and thought about it being an edible fish. So that's what we're trying to do here at Cornell to hopefully encourage people to consume more local and even in domestic products, and create markets and have fishermen receive higher prices for their fish that's landed here. I hope that answers the question.
Thanks, Kristen.
I have a comment on that, actually. Let me see. How do these tastings, for example, or the education that you're trying to do for consumers, how are they being promoted? Because I've literally never heard of that. And I'm speaking as a consumer who would love to participate, to love to be educated. But I think there might be a disconnect between your intention and the things that you have done at restaurants and things. But it doesn't seem like, if it hasn't reached me, for example, that I'm reaching out, like I'm looking for these things and I haven't heard of it. So I don't know. I wonder how the word can be spread more. For example, like, do you go to Essex Market to do promotional events, or trying to spread the word of these other types of fish that can be consumed, how to consume them? And I think that developing the content, like the cooking videos, are really good. But also before today, I'd never heard of it. This is just me. I wanna help.
Oh, I appreciate any insight and suggestions, and we are working with restaurants on Long Island. I mean, we did start our restaurant tasting events only, right after COVID. Well, once COVID had allowed us to start it.
Okay, so this is new.
Summer,
it's a new program.
Relatively new with the tasting events
Right.
that we've started on Long Island, in Long Island restaurants. So, I mean, I would love to connect with you and if you put your email in the chat, I'll reach out to you and maybe we can have a conversation and know where you're looking. And I'd be happy to, help, further promote some of these events with any of your suggestions.
Sure.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Epic, and thanks, Kristen. So I think just in general, it's just a very challenging market given the complexities that is and our seafood products, the diversity of species that are available and the different nuances of sustainability and where it comes from. One thing I kind of try to highlight and have people try to think about is when you look at some of the stats and the stats of what's being exported versus imported, we export almost 80% of the product that we catch. And we import and consume about 90% of the product that we eat. So the reason we export so much is we can get top dollar for that product. So you got to think about why are countries that are producing far more seafood than we are purchasing our product at premium dollar. So we have a high quality product. It's just a matter of getting consumers really aware of that. The other challenge is some consumers, even if they are concerned about sustainability, the price sometimes just they can't justify it and they can't pay the premium price that our product has to go for because of the added regulations. So unfortunately, US seafood tends to be a premium product that's not super accessible to many, although we can change that by increasing the market for some of these abundant underutilized species. All right. There was one more question I want to try and answer quick, and then we want to transition into our last little talk. I'm going to share some additional resources that might be helpful to you. So as well as voluntary measures and consumer education, are there more direct measures that one can do to help support leveling the playing field, such as tariffs, seafood imports, tariffs on imports from unregulated, unsustainable fisheries? It's another challenging one. I'm not aware of any specific regulations in place that are doing that. There are kind of rules in place now to require tracing and traceability within certain species to help level the playing field there. But it's not always easy to identify fisheries overseas that are not playing by the rules. And so it's a game that there are lots of people within the industry looking in and trying to address these things, but it is very complex. And I don't necessarily have a quick answer for you there. I don't know if Kristen, Scott, or Tara do either.
No, it's tough to kind of look at it that way. Conversely, what we've done is kind of look at it the other way when you were talking about things we're exporting, is taking a look at things like monkfish, where we export a lot of monkfish, but we're not really utilizing it here domestically, and there's no real answer to that. So that is one of the things that we here at Cornell do, is we look at the industry, see what their needs and concerns are, and we are that's an active project that we're trying to see, is that how can we improve things like monkfish or other underutilized species here domestically so that they can compete with exports.
There's an interesting story. I don't know if anybody has seen Chef's Table on Netflix, but I think in the first episode, there's a chef there. He talks about an earthquake that happened in Italy, and when this earthquake happened, a lot of the rolls of Parmesan cheese fell off of their storage, and they broke. And they had to, they were going to lose. It was going to really affect the industry. And a lot of the cheese producers contacted, they got together and they contacted this chef. And the idea was can you make a dish that everybody can make, all the restaurants in the area can make and sell, that'll popularize that cheese and make a market for the cheese. And it seemed like it worked. I think it was hugely successful, and they actually sold all of the product that was gonna be lost, and it was gonna affect everybody in that industry. So I just feel like if there's an issue like that, what type of collaborations can be done with popular chefs nationwide or in New York specifically that could change people's minds about this fish, get them interested in it?
Yeah, thanks, Epic. And I think that's something that we've been exploring and trying to get popular chefs to take on these underutilized species and kind of highlight them on their dish. There's many challenges that come along with that. And we're happy to talk to you more about it, but I do want to jump in. We only got 4 minutes left, so I want to quickly get through our last few resources. But if you reach out to me, Kristen, Scott, Tara, Emma for aquaculture, we're happy to talk to you more and explore things and catch you up on some of the other programs and projects we have coming down the line, some of which I'll do right now. But thank you everybody for all the very insightful questions. If you have more, you're welcome to reach out to myself, Kristen, Tara, Scott, Emma, anyone else here at Sea Grant, and we're happy to try and answer those for you. But before we end the session today, I want to introduce a couple other resources and opportunities that we have coming down the line. Today, because we are focused on our New York fisheries, I do want to start with the first resource of our annual commercial fishing survey report. So we worked with Cornell Cooperative Extension of Suffolk County, the Department of Economic and the Suffolk County Department of Economic Development and Planning, and the Long Island Commercial Fishing Association to develop and distribute a survey to commercial fishermen across Long Island. The survey was meant to help better understand and convey the status of New York's commercial fishing industry, as well as the challenges they face. While this year's survey only reflects the responses of 67 fishermen, it starts to give us a glimpse of our industry and some of their challenges. The results also highlighted opportunities and ideas to support and assist the industry. Today, I'm going to quickly review some of the results, but encourage you to review the report more closely. It's available online and can be accessed through the New York Sea Grant Seafood Links link tree, which we'll place in the chat box. All right. The report highlights a variety of different Long Island fishing practices, including the different gear types used. Here's just one graph from that section of the report highlighting that pots and traps were the most common gear type used by the 67 respondents, followed closely by otter trawls, hook and line, and gill nets. You can visit the report to learn more about each gear type, its frequency of use, and how it functions. In addition to the information on fishing practices and efforts collected, the survey also looked to assess the challenges of the industry. The challenges were broken down into 4 categories: regulatory challenges, environmental challenges, infrastructure challenges, and business and marketing challenges. While I'm not going to go into detail on all of the challenges within each category, I want to take a look at those that were identified as the most challenging by the 67 respondents. The most challenging by category was identified as the challenge with the most respondents selecting extremely challenging. For our regulatory challenge, that was inappropriate state-by-state fisheries allocations. Number 1 in environmental challenges section was environmental pollution and loss of fisheries habitat. Our number 1 challenge for infrastructure was rising costs associated with fishing. And for business and marketing, the biggest challenge was finding the next generation of Long Island fishermen. If you want to learn more about these challenges and other challenges they face, you can check out that report. In addition, we also wanted to assess the impacts of the pandemic on the industry. So there were several questions added this year specific to the pandemic. This question specifically sought to determine the overall impacts on fisheries revenue for the 67 respondents. And for those who answered, 39 respondents experienced a decrease in revenue, 4 experienced an increase, and 2 saw no change. While there was a large portion of the report dedicated to highlighting the challenges, we also sought to better understand the opportunities and what investments could be made to support the industry. 37 commercial fishermen offered their valuable perspectives on which aspects of the industry are most in need of investment. And to visualize those responses, this word cloud was generated to highlight the most common words used by fishermen. The size of each word in the cloud is proportional to the number of times it is mentioned in their response, and each word in the cloud was mentioned at least twice. More specific information on the opportunities and investments in supporting the industry are provided throughout the report. The report concludes by highlighting the major challenges of the industry and providing ideas for potential solutions to support and enhance New York's historic fishing industry. This is intended to be an annual report, and our goal is to increase the number of responses so that we can better educate and raise awareness of our local fishing industry, the challenges they face, and identify potential opportunities to support the industry. So if you are a fisherman or you know a fisherman, please share this with them so we can get their responses and make sure that our industry is, as a whole, is being better represented in our 2022 report. I also want to introduce quickly our seafood processing and marketing resources. These were developed to assist the seafood industry in bringing products to market, outlining the regulatory framework, but also giving additional supplemental information on some of the topics in there. We have similar guides for our seaweed processors, a regulatory guide, and then a guide looking at the specific regulation for seaweed safety. We've got a variety of seafood marketing resources that are available. They're free online, fully customizable. They can be branded with the company's logo and all the information for that individual producer. Also can be used by culinary professionals to educate their waitstaff, also to educate their patrons. We've got some free seafood HACCP training. So seafood HACCP is the regulatory, the food safety regulations surrounding seafood. So fishermen and farmers interested in doing more processing and marketing direct are welcome to partake in this opportunity. We have a limited number of spots to get you that training certificate for free. CCE has their local fish campaign, which you saw a lot of today, where you can find and locate retailers. You can look at the additional cooking demos. You can do and learn more about the local fish tastings that they offer, as well as additional outreach and education materials. Great Lakes Fish Finder is now live. You can find more local fish in the Great Lakes regions through that website, and it'll connect you to the various businesses producing seafood throughout the Great Lakes. And finally, Grow NYC is a partner on the summit planning team. They run the green markets in New York City, where they do have local seafood producers selling their fish. Please check them out, purchase our New York product, and thank you all for participating today. As I said, anything that was recorded, so some of our in-person as well, will be available online, and I will send an email out to everyone once those are available. All right, sorry to keep you a little bit over, but thank you for joining and sticking in, and enjoy your weekends.
Thanks, everyone. That was awesome.
Everyone. Thanks, Mike.
Thank
job.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.